So you've heard about neuro-linguistic programming, but how do you use it to master your life? Keep watching. I'm Damon, this is Life Mastery Gym, and I teach people just like you cutting-edge NLP processes and techniques so that you can master your life and take charge of your destiny. So if that sounds good, make sure you click that subscribe button right down here so you can get these videos on a regular basis. I've been practicing NLP for several years now, and I teach it and I use it as the basis of all of the one-on-one coaching that I do. In that time, from the very first time that I started learning NLP until now, it has been an incredible journey. A journey that I want to take as many people with me as possible because my life is so completely different. I've gone from being depressed and not accomplishing much and not feeling like I had much to offer the world to completely changing all of that and living an extraordinarily fulfilling life. By the end of this video, you're going to have a much better understanding of how to use NLP to do exactly that, how to use NLP to master your life. Now I'm going to speak in very general and broad terms here. This is a way of introducing you to these concepts. Of course, you can go so much deeper into these concepts than I'm going to go into in this video. But if you would like me to take any one of these concepts that I go into and drill down on it even more, or if you just have any questions, in the comment section right here down below, make sure you put your questions there, put your comments there. Let me know how this information affects you, or if it doesn't affect you, or if you have some questions or something you don't understand here, let me know. I will respond to you. So the first concept is the map is not the territory. This is one of the presuppositions in NLP, and it works very closely to the N, the neuro, in neuro-linguistic programming, because what you perceive through your five senses and how you represent that information internally is going to be different than what is actually happening in what we would call objective reality. Put another way, is you will never know the territory. You will never know objective reality because everything, all of that information that's hitting your five senses passes through those five senses first, and along the way it becomes distorted, deleted, and generalized. I've done videos on deletion, distortion, and generalization. Just know that that is the basis of all NLP. We do not interact with reality directly. We interact with it through our five senses as well as a projection of that internal representation, which is that map that I referred to. A map is very, very useful. I mean, we've been using maps throughout history. Why? Because you can hold in your hands a map with just the relevant information that will help you get from point A to point B. Now, if we were to recreate the territory in a map completely with every single molecule of the territory to recreate that territory in terms of a map, it wouldn't be a map anymore. It wouldn't be useful anymore. If you think about like a GPS on your phone, how useful that is. You can hold it in the palm of your hand. It tells you exactly where you need to go. Now, here's the thing. Your map of reality, that internal representation that you have, needs to have lots of resources. It needs to have lots of choices. It needs to tell you where you need to go. And a lot of people's maps of reality are impoverished, meaning they're not accessing their resources. Their maps don't show them the choices that they have. Their maps are more limited than anything else. And so through NLP, we can better understand our internal map and change it and enrich it with choices and give it more possibilities and give it more resources, because the choices are there. The choices are out there in the territory. There are limitless possibilities. We have no idea how many possibilities and how many choices and options and resources are out there in the actual territory. So we need to have good, accurate, effective, enriched maps, enriched with choices and enriched with resources. It's all there, but a lot of people are not accessing it. The map is not the territory. What your perception is of reality. If you feel like you live in a very limited world that is very hostile, know that that is not how it has to be. You have met plenty of people who they live very happy, fulfilled lives, and the world around them, if you ask them, they say, hey, it's great, everything's good. Not everything is good. There's some things that are not so great, but in general, everything is good. That usually tells you that they have a different map. They have a map with more choices, more possibilities, more resources. So in NLP, what we look to do is add more choices, add more resources to our maps. and good accurate information on our maps to help us get us to where we want to go. The second concept I want to share with you is language, the L in Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Now, language is very, very interesting. So language is sort of like an expression of that map that I was just talking about. So when you listen to someone's language, how they speak gives you a lot of clues about how they perceive their map of reality. In fact, there are multiple language pattern models created in NLP. The meta model was the very first one, the very first model ever made in NLP. It's a language-based model to recognize basically limitations in a map, or an impoverished map, so that you can add resources back into it, so that you can add choices back into it. So language is, in a sense, another type of map. It's a map of a map. It's a map of it's an expression of a map, but it's a map of reality. When you think about what does language do? When I say apple, an apple doesn't come flying out of my mouth, and I don't have to show you an apple. If I say apple, it triggers an internal representation in you, so you know what I'm talking about. So language is a map of reality, and that the language is based on your internal map, your internal representation of reality. When you understand this, you start to choose your words wisely. You start to choose your words differently. Or sometimes the way you say something, you realize, oh, I see what's going on here. I see where my limitation is. And if you can understand what your limitation is, then you can change it. But most people's limitations and their resistance to what it is they want is very unconscious. So they don't know how to get at it. Language is one way that you can get at it. Language, recognizing language patterns, is one way that you can shine the light on where is the limitation, where is the problem, and then we can go in there and make some changes. The other interesting thing about language is it's also reflexive. As you speak your language, as you express your internal map, it sort of brings it to another level. And when you're expressing language, it becomes reflexive. Your own words, the way you say it, when you say it, affects your experiences as well. For example, you might have thought something in your mind, and then when you spoke it out loud, then you had a kind of a different perspective of it. We all experience this from time to time. Another interesting way that we can use language to learn better is my own example. Whenever I never intended to become an NLP teacher or an NLP coach, but what I started doing, because I loved NLP and I wanted to do it all the time, is I realized that at a certain point, if I wanted my understanding and my learning to go deeper, it would help me a lot to start teaching it. Why is that? Well, when you can summarize something, when you can clearly bring something together, something you've learned, but then you can not just regurgitate it, not just recite it because you've memorized what someone else has said or you've memorized something in a book, but you can actually summarize it in your own words, your understanding of it goes even deeper. Using language, you alter experience. It's reflexive. So you got to be careful with that too, though, because it can go the other way. It can turn an okay experience into something very negative, or a feeling of something very limited. So very important that you understand language patterns and how you use language to represent your internal map, and how the language you use, the patterns you use, affects your experience. When you understand this really well, then you can use language to affect yourself in a way, affect your experiences in such a way that they're more uplifting, they're more resourceful, and overall more positive. Programming, the programming part of neuro-linguistic programming. Now this kind of freaks people out from time to time because they go, ooh, programming, like you're programming your mind, like mind control. Well, yes and no. We're not really trying to program people, but what we need to understand, or a better way of looking at programming, is automation. You know, automation is this big topic in the world today. Why? Because we're turning to automation for just about everything. This is not a new idea. This has been around since there have been humans. Your mind is an automation machine. It's always trying to automate things, because the more you can automate decisions, the less energy you have to put into them. And this probably goes back to our evolution, which hasn't caught up to our times now. Saving energy was one of the most important things, because basically humans had to look for food all day long. So if your mind could automate anything to shortcut and not have to burn as much energy, that was very, very helpful. Well, we're still operating off that same kind of mechanism, but your automations, are they being updated? Are your programs being updated? Because what happens a lot of times is we're running off of programs we created when we were kids, but now we're adults, and now we've got different responsibilities, we have different desires. So in other words, another way to think about it is it's 2020, the year 2020. Are you still operating off of Windows 95? If you haven't upgraded your programs in your computer, you're going to have a lot of trouble. You're going to have a lot of resistance. Your computer's going to crash a lot. Same thing happens to us. If we don't update our programs, we're not very well suited and fit to live in the environment that we're in. And you see this a lot. You see this in, to a lesser extent, when someone is just feeling very limited. They talk about doing something that they want to do, but they never get off the couch and do it. They have all these ideas, all these things that they say that they want to do, but they never get around to doing it. That's probably because they are running off of an old program that hasn't been updated. And then it's more extreme when someone experiences depression, or when someone collapses under pressure over something, or you see people acting like children when they're full-grown adults. This is all clues and examples of when someone hasn't updated their programming. So what NLP does is we learn how to model our programming. We learn how, and the meta model was one way that we can understand what our programming is, but it's not the only way. Submodalities are another way to understand our programming. So we take things that for most people are unconscious, and for what has probably been unconscious for most of your life, and we ask good questions. And so we pull what's in the unconscious out into consciousness, and we find all of these programs, all of these habits, all of these automations that have been running the way that they've been running because we didn't know any different. They were unconscious, so we couldn't change them. And a lot of this is where we get our limiting beliefs from. They're beliefs that were created, that were probably created for a good reason at one time, but they're not serving us anymore. So we go into the unconscious, we pull this out into consciousness, and then we can look at it and say, okay, well, now that I know, now I have a choice about it. But when your programs are unconscious, you don't have a choice, because you don't know how to change anything because it's unconscious. So at that point, your programs are running you. The idea behind NLP is that you bring this into consciousness. So instead of your programs running you run the programs. You decide what programs are appropriate for now. Now, again, things might change around you. Your life changes. The people you're around changes. Your responsibility changes. This is an ongoing process. You want to know NLP so that you can constantly go back into your programming when something isn't working and change it, have choice about it. And this is so powerful. It's a lifelong study. It's a lifelong practice of being able to adapt and be flexible to changes. A lot of people aren't. But when you understand this, change isn't so hard, change isn't so painful when you just realize it's just about updating a program. If you want to take this even deeper, I suggest that you learn the meta model. When I was first learning NLP, I went to an NLP master, a trainer, and I said, hey, I want to start learning this. What do you suggest? And he said, learn the meta model. Most NLP students will overlook it because they don't realize how powerful and how amazing it is. But he was so right. When I learned the meta model, and again, it's one of those things you just keep going back to, it goes deeper and deeper. When you learn the meta model, you sort of have the key and the code, not just to NLP, but to all experience. You really understand how we create experiences. And when you understand that, then you have a lot more control and choice about it. So if you'd like to learn a little bit more about the meta model, if you go to the description down below, you click on a link, there's a PDF there that you can download. Get that PDF, it has some of the meta model language patterns. It's a great place to start. It's a great place to start your NLP journey and start to understand this. And here's the thing, I know a lot of advanced NLP people who do not even know the meta model. They never took the time, even though it's the first model you usually learn in a practitioner training. Most people don't even know that model. So learn that model, it will put you way ahead of most NLP students. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button and hit the bell so you'll be notified when I put new videos out. And last but not least, if you can think of a friend or a family member who would benefit from watching this video, make sure you share it with them. Take care.